Also on the subject of political reform, campaign finance seems like a pretty big spending year, both here in the 4th District, Eureka, and then also up north. Campaign contribution caps. Given the failure of Measure T, there's really no campaign finance for local candidates. Do you think cap on the amounts of individual contributions to candidates something that's sensible? And then also the way the elections can drag out with the runoff that's very likely in both races, given Supervisor Neely and her opponents and yourself and your opponents. Would you like to see a system of ranked choice voting where the folks could rank their choices, avoid the spoiler effect, and still make their decision in one round in November instead of stretching it out basically for a year-long campaign?
Yeah, I like the ranked choice voting. I think that would make some. I think that would be efficient. I've looked at that in a number of situations. When I was in charge of the co-op, we looked at that as a voting mechanism as well for the board of directors there. I think it's very thoughtful and effective, and I think that that is something that would be better than having the two elections. I think as you said, the two elections are incredibly expensive, and I think the money could be used for better things. I'd like to see an overall cap on spending. I think is where I'd like to go, as opposed to an individual cap on it. I think the amounts of money that are having to be raised in this election, what happens is one person raises a lot of money, and then everybody else needs to sort of keep up, I guess, in order to just not be, in order to be heard. Mm-hmm. And there's this concern that if you don't have the resources, if there's unequalness, then one person is not going to have a chance to get their views out there. I think that capping the individual donations doesn't necessarily make that work. I mean, I think one person could get a lot of donations from businesses, and even those might be capped at $1,500. That overall, that could wind up being a substantial amount of money. So I'd rather see kind of a hard limit on the absolute dollars that are be able to be spent in a race. I think that would focus the issues more back into the neighborhoods and neighborhood forums and make it more personal.
So speaking of being heard, of course, most of those dollars are spent on mainstream media and getting the word out through TV, radio, print, and so forth. What do you think the role of the media has been in this election? And of course, the issue of who's showing up to whose debates that are sponsored by so-and-so's company. Seems like this has come up not just in the KHUM context, but also in the context of KHSU. And I guess there's a radio talk show there, a certain political leaning that some folks feel more comfortable on than others. So what's your take on that?
Well, I welcome any debate on any format, in any situation. And, to me, the more we have debates, the more people can see a candidate and pick up the nuances and also see how they react in uncomfortable situations. In the case of the KHUM debate, KHUM has a long tradition of political coverage. We are covering every race out there with a debate. It seemed awkward to us to not have a 5th District supervisor, despite the fact that I was, the general manager there. So we tried to preempt the conflict of interest by bringing in the North Coast Journal as having a third party. We would simply be a transmission vehicle. Given the fact that one of my opponents has refused to be on that, I've offered to go on any other radio station in the county to try to have that debate. And I know that KGOE over at Bicoastal Media has offered to do it. I know both Pat Higgins and I have accepted that offer. We're hoping that Mr. Sundberg will accept that offer as well. I think that it's important to have as many opportunities for the public to see the candidates, to hear the candidates, to have the interaction of ideas. And, so I've been attending every debate I can, and I think that's important. And I think it's unfortunate if in the case of a situation of the station where I manage it, that we can't work out some sort of comfortable way to get rid of the conflict of interest. I thought we had addressed it head on this one, but clearly not everybody agrees with me.
Well, and isn't there, to be fair, somewhat of a cozy relationship between North Coast Journal and your radio networks? Their editors had a show on KHUM and so forth.
At one point in time, I don't know if I'd call it a cozy thing. I think Hank Sims would take a lot of umbrage at that. I think that, but, we're also not tied to the North Coast Journal. It could be the McKinleyville Press. It could be the Times Standard. Any third party that Mr. Sundberg would be comfortable with would be fine with us at KHUM. The idea was basically not to get beyond the conflict and to be able to come up with a third party that would feel comfortable to all the candidates. I'm willing to debate on KINS. I'm really not concerned at all about the forum of it. And I'm willing to go up to Sherry Heights and do a debate there. I mean, I really don't, I'm not concerned about the conflict of interest situation, because I think that the public would be happier just seeing the candidates. And I think the public has a good sense of what's fair and what's not fair.
Well, we certainly want to thank you for not playing favorites, for coming in and speaking with us today. What parting words would you have for the voters at home or on their laptop computers there as they consider their choice for Election Day?
I think that the voters in the 5th District should feel very lucky. I think they have some really good candidates, and I think that too many times people complain that there are not good people running for office, and in this case I think that all of us, I've had the pleasure to know everyone now. I think they have some good choices, and I think that's great. What I would ask the voters to do is look beyond the campaign promises, because I think that candidates can promise anything, whether it's a chicken in every pot and 2 cars in every garage, or 40 acres and a mule. To look at the actual experience, to look at the person's track record and see what they've done. I think that's the thing that I bring to the table, is not only 31 years of business experience, but over 10 years of public service here in Humboldt County, with something as big as the Headwaters Fund and something as small as the Big Lagoon Community Services Specialty. So I think that's where everybody should look at the track records and make the best decision. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Cleary. Really do appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, no, I thank you, and this is great public service that you're doing. So.